We're all hurtling towards death.
Within the world of cinema, there are few screenwriters quite as idiosyncratic as Charlie Kaufman.
And the Oscar goes to Charlie Kaufman, Michael Gondry, and Pierre Bismuth for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Thanks to the Academy, 29 seconds, 27 seconds.
Being John Malkovich. Adaptation and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind all appear on the Writers Guild of America's list of the 101 greatest movie screenplays ever written. Despite the former films being directed by Spike Jonze and Michel Gondry respectively, everyone credits these projects as Charlie Kaufman films. Everyone credits the writer above the director, which was and still is completely unprecedented.
If what you're doing does not have the possibility of failing, then by definition you're not doing anything new.
When we peel away the many metaphysical and surrealist elements found within Kaufman's world, at its core we find a deeply personal truth.
Perhaps I'm not interesting, but I am the only thing I have to offer, and I want to offer something. And by offering myself in a true way, I am doing a great service to the world, because it is rare and it will help.
It seems somewhat absurd to suggest that an individual who wrote themselves into their own screenplay displays great humility, but that's precisely what Charlie and his works show. In Adaptation, for example, Charlie lays bare the painful reality of writing and his endless struggle with creativity.
I'm pathetic, I'm fat and pathetic.
It's hard for me. I'm not disciplined that way. I wouldn't say it's a compulsion. I would say it's my job and I have to do it to pay my mortgage, and I try to do it in a way that feels, I mean, I like doing it sometimes, and I can't think of anything I'd really rather do, but it's hard.
Creativity is the bedrock of Kaufman's work. In order for him to be as authentic as possible, he draws from his experiences and his own truth of the world. But this truth of the world is constantly evolving, constantly expanding in scale and scope.
As I move through time, things change. I change, the world changes. The way the world sees me changes. I age, I fail, I succeed, I am lost.
No more is this use of scale and scope evident than in Kaufman's directorial debut, Synecdoche, New York.
I've been thinking a lot about dying lately.
You're gonna be fine, sweetie.
Synecdoche is a figure of speech in which a part is used to represent the whole, or vice versa. Within the context of the film, Caden Cottard, played by the late and brilliant Philip Seymour Hoffman, attempts to make a play about the entirety of existence.
It's about everything. Dating, birth, death, life, family.
Caden is immensely fearful about illness and his own mortality. His world is filled with obituaries, treatment brochures and cartoons relating to viruses. His last name Cottard refers to a rare condition known as Cottard syndrome, in which the affected person believes that they are dead or that one's organs are missing or decaying.
911, state your emergency.
I'm sick!
Ma'am?
I'm sick!
Caden's fear is so crippling that it places him in a state of disconnection and isolation. His wife Adele grows increasingly distant, and Caden becomes disillusioned with his work. The play he initially directs, Death of a Salesman, lacks any sort of meaning beyond being commercially viable.
You're restaging someone else's old play. There's nothing personal in it.
While Caden's fears do hold him back, they also propel him forward. His perception of time moves at an increasingly fast and disorientating pace, and he comes to the realization that he wants to create something entirely truthful.
And I want to do something important while I'm still here.
That would be the time to do it, yes.
But Caden isn't just motivated by fear, he is also greatly inspired by his wife Adele. He frequents her art exhibitions and holds her in the absolute highest regard as an artist. From Caden's perspective, her art is the apex of truth.
The best living artist. I mean, there's no one who stares the truth in the face like she does.
Part of the tragedy of Synecdoche, New York is that the truth that Caden so desperately chases is forever elusive. He spends his entire existence directing and in pursuit rather than actually living. In our finite existence, we will never be able to fully realise the limits of our potential and capacity to create. The life of the artist is self-sacrificial, and we are only here for a blink.
You know, explore it truthfully. Try to continue to try to find your voice, which is kind of, I think, an ongoing, lifelong process. I'm still trying to do that. I mean, I don't feel like I've arrived anywhere.
While Synecdoche, New York, or any piece of art may not achieve the elusive total truth as sought jointly by Caden and Charlie, this in no way undermines the outstanding achievement of Kaufman's debut. To encompass so much of our existence in a screenplay is simply extraordinary. Through its fragmented and dreamlike structure, the film embodies in some way a part of every single one of us. It prompts deep introspection and a re-evaluation of all of our lives. Because of Charlie's uncompromising dedication to truth, the film feels like his most intimate and personal work to date, the pinnacle of his own creative philosophy. It is for this reason that I believe Synecdoche, New York to be Kaufman's greatest ever achievement, and one of the greatest films ever made.
The end is built into the beginning.
But despite its immense artistic merit and purity of expression, the film performed poorly commercially, earning just $4.5 million at the box office against a budget of $20 million. As a result of this, Kaufman has found it incredibly difficult to fund any of his future projects.
People all over the world spend countless hours of their lives every week being fed entertainment in the forms of movies, TV shows, newspapers, YouTube videos, the internet. And it's ludicrous to believe that this stuff doesn't alter our brains.
Following Synecdoche's release back in 2008, Kaufman's next feature film would be 2015's Anomalisa, which he co-directed with Duke Johnson. After failing to obtain funding for several years, Kaufman had to rely on Kickstarter to raise the $400,000 he needed to begin production. This funding was only sufficient to adapt Kaufman's originally conceived audio play into a short film, which was later expanded into a feature film when Paramount Animation joined production.
That sounds really, really good. I'll have the same.
The only other feature film Kaufman has directed is I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which was an adaptation of the 2016 novel of the same name, and was distributed by Netflix.
That was beautifully run. You're fired.
Of course, Kaufman isn't the only auteur-director who has struggled to acquire funding for his projects. Recently, Francis Ford Coppola also failed to finance his $120 million epic Megalopolis, eventually having to resort to financing the film himself.
I fear that the film industry has become more a matter of people being hired to meet their debt obligations because the studios are in great debt. And the job is not so much to make good movies, the job is to make sure that they pay their debt obligations. And obviously, new companies like Amazon and Apple and Microsoft, they have plenty of money. So it might be that the studios that we knew for so long, some wonderful ones, are not to be here in the future anymore. I don't know.
And then we have David Lynch, who has yet to find funding for the animated movie Snoot World he plans to make. It is truly absurd and such a sadness that we live in a world where some of the greatest directors in the history of the medium can't fund their projects.
And it's also equally ludicrous to believe that, at the very least, this mass distraction and manipulation is not convenient for the people who are in charge. People are starving. They may not know it because they're being fed mass-produced garbage.
In an interview back in August last year, Kaufman highlighted the problematic nature of the current Hollywood diet. He stated, and I quote, "The diet is so corrupted and has been for so long. It's like if you eat all your life, you want If you eat processed food, you crave it, and you wouldn't if you hadn't been fed it all your life. That's what the movie machine does, and I find it really offensive. It makes me angry."
It's a business of selling something that's important to them by disguising it as something that's important to you.
Cinema is in a very precarious time right now. With a clear shift away from more artistic and challenging films, I think there is a great danger here.
Particularly important now when cinema is devalued, demeaned, belittled from all sides. Not necessarily the business side, but certainly the art.
This sustained devaluation and dilution of the art house has meant that the diet, as Kaufman refers to it, has become even more widespread and accepted. Undeniably then, the current commercial cinematic landscape has in some part contributed to the rapid decrease in people's attention spans and decline in visual literacy.
Reach younger people at an earlier age, for them to shape their minds in a critical way of looking at these images and what they mean, and how to interpret imagery.
With lower visual literacy, audiences can be much more easily satiated. They become less critical and easier to please.
And I'm talking about mainstream industry. The only goal is to get you to buy a product. The only goal, the only goal, the only goal, the only goal. And this intention creates the movies that we sit through. And the movies that we sit through create us.
The more mindless the consumer, the better it is for the executives. If they are able to cut corners and sell people an inferior product while maintaining or even increasing their profits, then they will do exactly that. And here is the danger that we are yet to see fully take hold in the film industry, and that is of course AI.
I guess the thing that I'm most passionate about is the issue of AI. I think it's a very extraordinarily dangerous, slippery slope, and I think once it's gone down, there's no return. It's the end of creativity for human beings. It's what it's going to lead to.
After a 148-day strike, screenwriters finally agreed to a deal with Hollywood studios that included strong guardrails on how AI can be used in both film and TV. While writers and creatives managed to win this battle, the war is far from over. The deal struck was for 3 years and is due to end in 2026. One of the agreed terms allows studios to use pre-existing material to train AI, despite the Writers Guild of America's initial proposal which wouldn't have allowed this. With the pace at which AI is currently advancing, I think it is incredibly unlikely that a similar deal will be reached in 2026. And instead we will see studios utilise AI to its absolute limit.
If we stop creating ourselves, if we stop doing that, then we're giving up something, aside from what happens to the industry or what happens to movies, we're giving up something that's primal, that's essential, that's been part of human experience and necessary to human experience as long as there have been humans. And I think it needs to be protected. And the business is not going to do it. And if the business can do without people, then there's not a chance that they'll go to people, because it's cheaper for them, and that's all they care about.
We are all hurtling towards death, the end of humanity and all creation.
The end is built into the beginning.
And yet, I believe that hope still remains.
Yet here we are for the moment, alive.
When I look at Synecdoche, or Eternal Sunshine, or Adaptation, or Being John Malkovich, what makes these works so special is how personal and truthful they are.
Our work is to reflect the world, say what is true in the face of so much lying.
As creatives and as humans, we all have our own unique experiences, our own unique strengths, weaknesses, qualities and feelings. An AI may be able to learn these aspects, but experiencing them is something entirely different. The works an AI creates are, by definition, artificial, and stand in complete opposition to Kaufman's philosophy.
I have dropped the ball, wasted years seeking the approval of people with money. Don't get trapped in their world of box office numbers. You don't work for them. You don't work for the world of box office numbers. You work for the world.
While I'm no oracle, I believe that after a period of experimentation and AI replacement by executives, we will revert to a new baseline. AI will not be entirely erased from creative processes. Instead, it will be used as a tool to simplify and increase our creative capabilities. If history has taught us anything, it's that humans are immensely resilient, and we will win this war. In the aftermath of this profit play, human creativity and art will not only survive, but thrive as a result.
I won't settle for anything less than the brutal truth.
Perhaps I'm being overly optimistic, but only time will tell. I wonder what awaits at Journey's End, and who knows when or how it will all